Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is the Movement Restoration Lab Q&A for what is it? December 15th? Is that what it is? Let me see. I guess I should have looked first. December 16th. My apologies. 2025. We are fresh off of the Movement Restoration Challenge. It was super exciting. We are going to run another one on January 5th, and you guys will all get some more updates about that within the next week or so. Had a great time with everybody. I really appreciate everybody that came out or joined us, and for both the general and the VIP classes, we had some really cool stuff go on in that class and in the 5 days. So I'm excited to jump into another one. So typically, this call has been a little bit more what they would call diagnostic. And what I want to do is I want to set some intentions around this call and what it's going to look like going forward. So this is no longer a diagnostic call. What this call is going to be is this going to be a bridge and some support for the challenge, and then potentially, if you're interested in joining the collective, for also before you join the collective, and if you join the collective and you want to come hang out, then that's fine as well. So, but what we want to do, and the whole goal of the rebuild project is to help you build a body that can handle more and more activity, doing the things that you love, doing the things that you're passionate about, and really, getting you back to square one, but not only getting you back to square one, going past square one. So, oftentimes, what happens is that people will they'll try a program or go see someone, and what will happen is that they'll see some benefit for a short period of time, and then they'll start to get active again and regress. So the whole idea behind the rebuild project is I want to help you get past that, and then once you get past that regression, start to build you towards a more active lifestyle, getting you back to doing the things that you love again and moving well and feeling better. So again, there's we'll have no fixes on this call going forward or today. What we want to do though is we want to talk about people that are active, and they are trying to get through the things that they're struggling with, and they don't really have any help with it. And so, what we'll do, or what we do here, is we help give you some context to understand why those things are happening, potential strategies that you can use in both the movement restoration challenge and then in the collective. But we want to get you past feeling fragile and inconsistent, and really make you more confident in your body. So I'm gonna frame these three things together, and I want you to think about them. When you have an injury, it's not that it's a strength issue per se. Hello, Mary. We'll let Mary come in here. I'll keep going until she hops in. So, when you have an injury, it's not really a strength issue per se. It's not a motivation issue. It's really a capacity issue. Can you handle the loads, or can you handle, and what I say by load is I also mean stimulus. So, you have internal load. Well, you have load that you put on yourself, which means that your body and gravity, however you control that, and then you have load that then you have external load, whether that's from some sort of resistance, whatever it is, whether it's a dumbbell, whether it's a barbell, whether it's a plate, whether it's a band. It's something that's external outside of you that's increasing the resistance. So the thing that happens with people though in them determining their capacity is they're not able to handle loads for long periods of time. I'll give you an example. So my son wrestled for 2 years in high school, and he's kind of like my wife a little bit. He's got some ligament laxity, and when he was wrestling 2 years ago, his senior year, he popped his knee, um, and it's been a little unstable from that time out. Now, uh, I suggested that he do some things, and it was obviously up to him whether or not he was able to do it or not. Um, but he, but now, because of certain goals that he has in his life, he's starting to get back to being active. And so, about 3 weeks ago, he started working out, and we sat down 2 weeks ago and looked at some programming and got some stuff in place for him. So he's running more, he's lifting more, and then he also is assistant coach on his old high school wrestling team, and so he's wrestling with the guys more. And this is a perfect example of Gabe in isolation is relatively strong. He works right now. He works at a auto service station, so he's lifting tires and he's moving heavy stuff. He's a strong kid, but as he starts to try to become more active, and this is what happened tonight, he's been on this pretty hard schedule for about 3 weeks now, and tonight he went to the gym and he just came back home because he was having pain underneath his knee. And most likely, what happened is that he just reached a capacity uh, issue. He's not letting himself recover enough, and this is one of those things that happens, And up until today, things were relatively good. He was getting stronger. He was able to start to run more. He's able to swim farther, do all those things, and he just reached a capacity issue. So, and we all have these, by the way. But when you're injured, your capacity issue, let's pretend like the normal person's capacity issue is this big. When you're injured, your capacity issue oftentimes is this big. So, what we want to start to do is we want to start to increase your capacity to be able to do the things that you want to do. So, you know, the other thing too is effort doesn't determine adaptation or your body to withstand the demand that you're putting on it. I think what happens with a lot of us, and I've been guilty of this too, is we look at when we were younger and think, well, I could do X, Y, and Z when I was younger, and I can no longer do that now, particularly if you have an injury. What happens though is that we want to try and push hard like we did when we were younger. And if you're a little beat up, what winds up happening then is that your that effort just compounds the lack of capacity or the lack of ability to handle the demand you're putting on your body. But what does start to build the capacity is organization. So having a plan that you can follow that meets you where just below where your capacity is, so that you can continuously make these little small wins each time that you're working out or you're doing your programming. And that's the thing that builds capacity, is those that steady slow grind of day by day, week by week, month by month, starting to improve the strength of your tendons, of your ligaments, of your joint. Because as you improve the strength in your tendons and your ligaments, the joint capacity gets better. And then also building tissue and building strength and muscle around that joint. And then also improving your mobility as well. So your ability to handle load in positions that aren't normal. And I think of like a first baseman in baseball as a perfect example, or a third baseman in baseball as a perfect example in this. If you look at Vladimir Guerrero, who plays Vlad Jr., that plays for the Toronto Blue Jays. I was watching the World Series this year, and Vlad's not a small guy, by the way. And he jumped out and did a full splits to grab a ball and then keep his foot on the base, and then came back up and was able to make the out and go back to the bench. A couple innings later, he's obviously back back on the field again. An inning later, not acting like nothing happened, and then he's able to bat. He's able to do his thing. That's what I think about his mobility. He has the capacity to go to longer ranges and is strong in those ranges. So, what is movement capacity really? Movement capacity is the ability to adapt, not just perform. And the problem, though, is that you have two people. They could have identical programs and maybe even identical like situations going on in their body, but they just have two different capacities. So In the movement restoration challenge and in some of the stuff that we do in the collective, we talk about the pelvis, rib cage, and skull. And why do we talk about the pelvis, rib cage, and skull? Well, as we talked about in the movement restoration challenge, the pelvis, rib cage, and skull are the biggest bony structures that you have, and you have a lot of things that connect to them. Most notably, the spine. And so, with your pelvis, what your pelvis helps you to do is it helps you to transfer force and then also direction. Uh, there's no way that your body can move without your pelvis moving. Um, and so that's why, like, um, when a lot of times with athletes, they look at your hips, right? And there's that saying, hips don't lie. Um, and then also oftentimes, like in fighting, you look at the collarbones or like the notches here because it's really hard to fake and have movement that's deceiving with this portion of your body because it's so stable. Um, so when what we find is that when the pelvis, rib cage, and skull starts to move interdependent or independently, so it moves well in all three planes of motion by itself, then things start to clean up. You start to organize better. The system starts to become less chaotic. There's less noise. Oftentimes, what will happen is that broad pain will go to very centralized, localized pain. And then when they start to work together in conjunction with each other, then what winds up happening there is that now we get better organization of global movement. And if your rib cage starts to move better, then your shoulders will start to move better. If your skull starts to move better or your neck starts to move better, oftentimes your shoulders start to move better. They're not always fixes of, when your shoulders and your rib cage move better, or your neck and your shoulders, or your skull and your shoulders move better. It doesn't always fix the shoulders, but it can oftentimes provide us with more information about what's actually going on a local level with the shoulders. And the same thing is true with the hips. As the pelvis moves better, oftentimes the hips feel better, but that doesn't all that's not necessarily always the fix. You've got to find what is going on in the hips, or maybe even how are the hips interplaying with the pelvis, and then how is the knee interplaying with the hips, which is interplaying with the pelvis, and then the ankle that interplays with the knee that interplays with the hips, and then the pelvis and the foot, and you can kind of climb the chain again. So when one doesn't move, though, so let's say your pelvis isn't moving well, and I often give the example of, when you look at long-term situations with low back injuries, oftentimes low back injuries will have resulting compounding problems. So if your back hurts and it hurts when you put weight on your right leg, you'll overuse your left hip more, or maybe you overuse your right knee more. Your knee stays bent more to take some pressure off it, or when your back hurts, you may not move it as much, so you move your neck more, and then that becomes a problem. Or if you wind up getting like a lumbar or a low back surgery, very often if your orthosurgeon's honest with you, they'll tell you, "Hey, look, most likely I'm going to see you again because we're going to have to do a neck. We'll have to do a neck surgery because of as your low back doesn't move as much, your head winds up moving more." So, um, when we look at uh, also when we start to look at tightness and that feeling of unstableness or that feeling of weakness, tightness doesn't always mean there's something wrong. Um, what it's often telling us is that that muscle isn't strong enough oftentimes to hold the load that we're trying to put it through. So um, since we got a lot of snow here in Minnesota last week, um, I did a lot of shoveling on Wednesday and Thursday, and then we had a Christmas party on Saturday, so I had to shovel parts of the driveway more. And then I went to jujitsu this morning, and so my back was a little bit tired from the snow shoveling over the weekend. And what I did before we started this call, just to kind of get some movement and some motion into it, is I got on the back extension machine and I just repped out some, I just got some reps in to reactivate that low back. And funny enough, as I did that more, my low back felt less stiff because I'm engaging the nervous system to say, hey, look, this thing can be active. In the beginning, what winds up happening is that we have a protective response, though. And so when I did my first couple reps, I didn't have the same range of motion that I did in the last couple reps because my brain was not sure that that was gonna I was gonna be able to handle that load or that range of motion. But as I did it more, I started to develop more range of motion, and that's an increase in capacity, and that increase in capacity that increases, and you gain more confidence when you know what you're supposed to do and what is actually helping you. And that's it doesn't mean that you're trying harder. Oftentimes when I program for people, I'll look at their program and go, "Oh my gosh, you're doing a million things." And that feeling of overwhelmed sometimes too, it is part of that cycle of the injury cycle because you're trying all of these things. And what we need to do is we need to narrow them down to minimal effective dosage. So what's the least amount of work that we possibly can do to get the most amount of benefit out of it in the beginning? And what we want to think about, what I'm thinking about with benefit is, can we build, start to build capacity at first? Can we build endurance? Can we then build strength? Can we build mobility? And then can we start to remodel tissue and lay down strong tissue? And that's why strength training is really important because through strength training, that's how you remodel that tissue and make that joint or that body part or that injured area more resilient. But we have to kind of go through those the endurance part in the beginning. That's why that's why I will oftentimes give real high repetitions because what part of the high repetitions does is it gives you endurance, but it also flushes blood into the tissue. And that in itself is what's helping us to repair the injury itself and then also strengthen everything around it. So we want those high repetitions. And then as we gain more endurance, we can build more strength, we can build more mobility, we have more capacity, and then we can start to really, increase the load or the resistance, so then we can start to lay down and remodel that tissue to make it a lot more stronger. So those are things that when I'm thinking about a lot when I'm trying to write programs for people and I'm working with them, and then even in the movement restoration challenge, those are the things that I'm thinking about because in the challenge, what happens is I don't know, a lot about somebody's history coming in sometimes, and so what I don't want to do is I don't want to max out their capacity right away. I want to start to explore, see if we can improve range of motion. And then as we improve range of motion, what oftentimes will happen is we'll start to gain more capacity. We'll start to gain more movement. We'll start to gain more quality of range of motion. And then what happens is the brain starts to feel confident because it's like, yo, I can do the things right now that you're asking me to do. And but also we're not looking for a phone book or an encyclopedia's worth of exercises. We're looking at like 3 to 5 max, and usually in the beginning it's maybe 2 to 4 that you can do on a regular basis that helps you to increase your capacity so that we can start to rebuild those healthy movement patterns. And so your brain also down regulates and says, yo, I'm good. I'm feeling better. I'm trusting that the body is ready to go on to this next phase and this next level. And I oftentimes find too that um, what will happen is that capacity will increase, and as we're starting to get stronger, there's a skill acquisition phase, meaning that sometimes your body has to relearn how to do those motions and be comfortable and confident with them. And one of the things that I'm always looking for is uh, when people tell me, "Oh my gosh, I did this today, and man, my back felt way better. There's no way I would have been able to do that 2 days ago, 6 weeks ago, 4 months ago, whatever it is." And oftentimes, I like it when people go, "I did that, and I didn't realize I didn't realize I was doing that movement until after I did it." And because then that lets me know that the brain is no longer flagging that motion or that movement as unsafe. So um, yeah, so that's really the thing that I want us to think about when we're trying to build a body that can handle the future demands that we're trying to put on it. But I also want us to think towards our future self. Who do we want to become? Right? What version of ourselves do we want to become in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, a year, 5 years? If you look at that on Sunday, I posted that video of my jiu-jitsu coach placing second at Worlds, and uh, Greg had stage 4 cancer. My coach, Greg, he had stage 4 cancer twice. He had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. That at the Mayo Clinic, because we're here in Minnesota, he went down to Rochester to do all of his cancer treatments. At the Mayo Clinic, they call it Nelson's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma or Nelson's lymphoma. And I think when I was looking up stats on it, I think there's only 30 people that have survived having that form of cancer. So he got that in 2000, and then he went and competed it in 2001, but in 2006 he wound up with stage 4 sciatic cancer. But if you were and Greg had to after the sciatic cancer and after the lymphoma, after the chemo and stuff like that, Greg had to teach himself to walk again. And you're talking about someone who at one point in time was could have went to college for either gymnastics or wrestling, and he chose wrestling. So he was a Division 1 wrestler in Minnesota, which is one of the best wrestling cultures in the country. I mean, you have Minnesota, Iowa, Oklahoma, Penn State, and the Midwest has good wrestling culture, but Minnesota is really at the top of especially at the high school level. So you had someone who was a very, very high level athlete. Greg's a mutant. I mean, like, at the end of the day, he when he went down the assembly line, he got things that the rest of us didn't get. He can't feel his left foot because of the sciatic nerve cancer, but he placed second at Worlds in jiu-jitsu. But there's no way that Greg in, let's say, 2002 could have forecasted that he would be at the black belt level at 60 years old and competing in jiu-jitsu. There's no way that he could think to that future self. But what Greg didn't do is he didn't give up. He kept working and he kept going through it. And I mean, uh, I've worked on him. I know his history. He's got some crazy stuff. We were training jujitsu on Black Friday, and I was one of the first sparring sessions that he had or that he did. And he comes up to me and he's kind of got his right shoulder like this, and I was like, "What's going on, coach?" He's like, "I tore my right labrum." I'm like, "Oh, yeah." He goes, "Yeah, so I just got to keep it close to my body, you know." And I'm like, Jesus, dude, like, really? But I mean, he continued to train on it. And if you watch in that video, like, that's a guy that can't feel his left foot. He's got so much arthritis in his right foot, in his right ankle, that the doctor, after asking him how much ibuprofen that he was taking, and he was like, none, maybe occasionally a Tylenol every once in a while, has a torn right labrum. I mean, he's got no knee, anything from no knee, no ligaments in his knee. He's got no MCL, I think, on his right knee, and no ACL on his left knee. I mean, it's craziness. Now, I don't expect everybody to be like Coach, to be clear, but that's an example of, like, he never gave up. He continued to work. Again, that guy who was second at Worlds at one point in time couldn't walk. So if we continue to look at that person that we want to be, and we aspire to be that person, and then we're patient and we have a plan, we can get to be there. So Well, I am going to wrap up here for the night. I hope you all have a great Christmas. I am going to be back in Michigan we fly on Sunday. Hold on one second. Sorry about that. My laptop decided that it wanted to go to sleep. We are flying out on Saturday. I'm sorry, and we're going. So I'll be there from Saturday to the following Monday. So there will be no call next week because I'll be with friends and family and stuff like that. So I hope you all have a great Christmas. I will talk to you all on, I believe it's the 30th. And yeah, have a great night. Thanks so much.